preparing to live stream. We are now streaming live on YouTube, it says. I never believe it though until I see it pop up. The if it is live and anyone's watching this, make sure you refresh to get the chat working, because there's been a lot of issues that people have had with the chat. So refresh until you see anything pop up. I'm going to pop it out. I'm going to comment. Hello. That's how creative I am. First comment just says hello. If you can see that, let me know. I don't think we have anyone watching just yet. Cool. So we got SPQR Cincinnati says chat is working. Good to go. Cool. So we'll let a few people roll in. We got, looks like 3, 4. Welcome everyone. One and all.
SPQR Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's my bro. Someone I know in real life.
Very cool. You know a few people in real life here.
Yeah, I have a few real life friends. They're not all internet friends. So live chat is working. There is a little bit of a delay, because if I ever unmute the video of ourselves on my channel, it's a little bit behind but not by much. So if you are putting something in the chat, it's probably something that for me and Shay, we said it a few seconds ago or whatever. So it's a little bit behind. Hello, everyone. So we were scheduled to have a guest tonight. They apparently dropped out for unknown reasons. So we're just going to do a free flow audience questions, talk a little bit about the coronavirus, since we're almost exactly 1 year in to 2 weeks to stop the spread. So it'll be interesting to, I titled it 2 weeks to stop the spread year 1, because that's how kind of ridiculous it is. And, you know, what do you think that people would have said or done if everyone somehow knew in March of last year that it was going to be that long of masks and shutdowns? Do you think people would have put up with it? Or do you think everyone would have just been like, no, it's not worth it at the time? It's hard to say. Because that was a whole entire year ago. Early for once. Yeah, you are. No bunker tonight. Yeah, you don't have the bunker background, Shay.
Yeah, I got my hair cut, so I was
Me too.
Yeah, I want to show it off a bit. You know, happy.
not phasing in and out of the background.
Yeah, I get to the Predator sort of, you know,
right.
that bunker background. So that's why I've got no bunker tonight, Mark.
Right. Yeah, it'll all be over by Easter, he says. Exactly. So that was a year ago, and we've seen various levels of lockdown. Like, we are just getting to the point now where I think that states are starting to get just fed up. Like, you've had Texas basically ended the mask mandate. I think Mississippi was another one. Was in South Dakota, wherever Governor Nome is, I think. It's north or South Dakota. I don't remember which one. I think South. And yeah, Florida was already leading the way, and just seeing that the states like Florida are having less issues with coronavirus, and even places like New York that have much stricter rules, it's not as simple as masks work or whatever. Like, maybe they make a difference, but it's certainly not massive one. So I definitely like that it's opening back up. They can blame it on the vaccine, getting the vaccine working if they want. I don't really care. The more things go back to normal, the less likely I think these companies are to mandate vaccines. But that reminds me, the vaccines. I posted this on Twitter. I have decided to recognize my privilege as a white heterosexual man, and I'm gonna decline the vaccine. Yeah, just hear me out. I'm gonna decline the vaccine until every underprivileged financially and person of color and LGBTQIAA person has received the vaccine in the entire world, because it would be wrong of me to take that when there's an unvaccinated, underprivileged person out there, and they're going to give it to me, an evil white straight man. That'd be terrible. So if anyone comes near me with the vaccine, they're a racist bigot, is what I'm trying to say. Until every other person of color and underprivileged person on the planet has been vaccinated. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice. What's that?
More than more people, so all the shorter white men have to get.
I'm not otherly abled, you know. I'm healthy, so I've got so much privilege. It would be wrong of me to accept the vaccine when there's less privileged people out there.
LGBTQ.
Yeah, IAAW. I don't know how many they added on now, but yeah. So I encourage all of you to also recognize your privilege and not take this spot in line of the vaccine. You know, you can give that to someone else too. But that does it does bring up a point though. Like we are getting to where we're soon going to get to the point where most people who want the vaccine have gotten it. So then it's going to be like, okay, are they going to start trying to force it on everyone else? That's where it'll be interesting. But luckily, we're seeing stuff open up more and more right now also. So there's going to be, as it gets back to normal, it's really going to be less of impetus to get to be so fervent about it. You know, once schools are open back up, once people are going to concerts and everything, like, yeah, there's still going to be people who are like, oh, everyone needs to have it. But I'm hoping at that point, the real desire to have everyone be vaccinated, employers get it on plane. You can't, get on planes without it will kind of hopefully go away, but I'm not convinced of that yet. That's just what I'm hoping. So what's
I'm
it
really
like?
glad, I'm really glad you brought that up because I identify as a white male, so I'm in the same category in terms of allowing everyone else to get it done first, right? So I don't want to approve anybody.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to jump in line in front of someone who's handicapped and transgendered and obese and whatever, they should all get that before me.
God damn. All right. So we did have a guest. Welcome, everybody. This is exciting Sunday night. Me and Eric we're not feeling the best, to be honest with you. A little low energy, but we're gonna make this happen. We did have a guest. Unfortunately, not too sure what happened. We're going to talk about gardening in Canada, and I'm not going to go there. But I think what we're going to do is bring on somebody who wants to come on and have a live chat. But there's a couple of rules. We'll call them the Colorado biker rules. Rule number one: if you got a camera, if you can actually in Colorado biker, if you're watching this, maybe just. We'd love to have you on again, but maybe have the camera on you. This is all we saw. Right. So if you've got a camera and a working mic and you want to join us for a few minutes here, that would be awesome. I see the notorious BRG is here.
Yep.
And just send me an email, info@Ontario Preppers, or send an email to Eric. We'll send you a Zoom link. You can join us. How you doing, man? Eric?
Doing well. Good? Like I said, I'm not feeling great today, but in general, yeah, doing great. Doing good. No issues.
I had a hike yesterday with my group. It was a good 20+ people, and we did some fire stuff in the woods. And it was good. It was a really good turnout. It was nice that people were just, like you said, I think by September, this thing's going to really wrap up. There's going to be ramifications financially. You're going to see some sort of ripple effect there. And psychologically, there's a lot of people that have been devastated by this. It's unfortunate. There's people it didn't affect at all, or there's people that it's just like, okay, this is a nuisance. And there's a portion of people that this has severely, well, thank you, CLM, has severely affected their way of life and being. And I think when we started off, if we're being fair and honest, Eric, I know for me, maybe you can elaborate. I thought this is it. This was serious. They stopped hockey and basketball.
Right.
The world paused. I thought, okay, wow, now we're going into a real pandemic. And I was really expecting a lot more severity in that.
For sure. And you can go back and watch our previous videos on it, and like I've said before, it was weird to see how we've been against the public perception no matter what it was. Like in the beginning, everyone was like, who cares? And we're like, wait a second, based on all the information we had, this could be really bad. And then as more information came out, we're like, actually it doesn't seem, and that's when everyone's like, oh no. And we're like, whoa, now that you have information, now you're going to act scared when you didn't care when we didn't have any. Like it's the exact opposite. So, and even back then in the very earliest of videos, we were saying that we're not necessarily worried about it for ourselves because we're in decent health and whatnot. But what does the country look like when hundreds of thousands or millions of people die from a disease? And we've definitely seen that because they're overreacting even when it's not that bad. Just imagine what would be going on if this was really killing 8 or 10% of the people that got it. You know what I mean? They're shutting everything down when it's killing a fraction of 1% of the people that get it, and you had literally nationwide shutdowns for months, basically, of various levels.
Absolutely, and certainly plausible as well with respect to how, like, we were just one or two steps away from it being, instead of a fraction of 1%, maybe it was 5% or 10%, which would dramatically affect the outcome that we've seen in the past year. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. This is a regular thing. We got to get a shot every year.
Right.
Seasonal, it's continuous. We're gonna have some special app on our phone. There's so many unknowns still, and to complement what you were saying about taking it severe and then less severe, we had numbers. We actually had this thing with JJ. It's okay. Well, how do you feel the severity of the virus this week?
Right.
We placed a number on the screen, and that gradually went down for all of us. I think we're up at like 8, 7, and 6, and 5. Now we went down to a 2. It's not that severe. How do you feel about it now in terms of severity?
Yeah, I would put it at a 2 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's something that does impact, certainly with the rest of the world's reaction to it, you know, obviously, but the actual impact of the virus itself, literally, if you weren't working directly in a medical setting and there wasn't the internet, you would have no idea that there was anything really going on. You know what I mean? It's the government response and the people's response to it it impacted everyone's lives. You know what I mean? Like this is something that the mortality rate actually of this virus, like the actual number of Americans that it's killed, if those numbers are real, still wouldn't really be noticeable by the average person if you didn't have it in the news. You know what I mean? And if it did, you would have been like, wow, it's a bad flu year or whatever. And that would have been the end of it. So definitely wasn't like a catastrophic occurrence in and of itself, but the impact from the reaction to that has been severe for a lot of people. You know, anyone who lost their job, is tons of businesses that are never going to come back because of that, just shut down completely.
It certainly had the potential because, you know, neither of us have a crystal ball. We gambled initially on the red card that said, you know, let's take this seriously. And out of the woodwork, we had all these YouTube videos, and even some, you know, doctors and scientists and whatnot with varying opinions on the severity. And it was very difficult to decipher what was true or real or accurate or valid compared to the hysteria. And there's still people today that have a lot of hysteria with respect to this whole
thing. I think is bizarre, because like I get that now we have a pretty good handle statistically on, like, we have a lot more data. You know, we know it's not killing 8% of or even 3 or 4% of the people that get it, things like that. Like the exact numbers might be a little muddled, and you can argue about things like if a mask makes any difference versus it making no difference. But there's no question that this thing is just simply isn't that dangerous for most people. So I've literally seen people that are like, you know, on Twitter and stuff, they'll be like, the bottom line is you wear a mask or you die, period. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, they have a completely unrealistic viewpoint on this, and it's become like almost religious, which is bizarre, because like this isn't something that we don't know anything about anymore. Like, you know, we all know people now who, like, remember in the beginning, we're like, oh, have you heard of anyone who had it? Like, oh, I think my coworker's sister might have got it or whatever, you know. And then like we all know, like I know multiple people who have had it, you know, and almost everyone does at this point. So it's like, it's kind of bizarre to still be that afraid of it.
Yes, agreed. But people still are, and they're of conviction that they need to drive around wearing masks because they're so terrified. I recall, I probably said this on the show before, there's one girl, she's a left-wing nuthead, this girl that lives up north on a off-grid farm place that I've got some buddies at. My buddy, he rents out this property to all these left-wing people. He's very liberal. He's a good guy. He's a good friend.
Yeah.
And some of the people that live there are
like a commune, like hippies, basically.
You know, well, yeah, feminists, growing, you know, pink hair and hanging out and stuff like that, right? Anyways, just reading some of the posts, they're like a paragraph this big talking about how just terrified they are to go to the mailbox down the road and bump into somebody. And I'm thinking, what is this doing to your mind? Forget this pandemic for a second. Look at some people are in very serious in need of very serious help. There's people right now like cringing at the
Right.
thought of
At some level, it's like a phobia. Like you don't even have, like, I'm not saying that no one dies from this thing, just like no one would say that no one has ever died in an airplane crash. But if someone was just utterly terrified of ever being on an airplane, you would recognize that as like an unrealistic phobia. You're like, look, all right, airplane crashes do happen, but millions of people travel every year. The risk is extremely low. Like you're being ridiculous. And that's the same situation. Like you don't have to believe that no one dies or has ever died of the coronavirus. But if you're outside of this really health compromised group or extreme age group, then it's just really not even in the top 10 things that you should be focused on if you're trying to actually lower the risk of death. Like there's people who are like, I'm seeing people who are like 150 pounds overweight being all like concerned about the other, mask wearing coronavirus. I'm like, you really that concerned about health? Because you could have fooled me. You know what I mean? Like there are things that you can concrete do. These people could to increase their chances of living an extra 10 years by like 50% probably. You know what I mean? And they're focusing on something that has a fraction of 1% chance of actually being harmful for them. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you're 150 pounds overweight, the chances are higher than if you're not. But still, if that's the concern, like I don't want to die, I wonder what we could do here to decrease that chance the most. Yelling at people for wearing masks or lose some weight,
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it's the same with smoking too,
Right. Right.
People over the top paranoid about catching this virus, but they're happy to put nicotine in their system. So
Yeah.
probably of something smoking related over long term compared to COVID.
Absolutely. Or even stuff like car accidents or, like no one would think twice if I, when I hop on a motorcycle or something. But if I like go somewhere without a mask, like, oh my God, you're risking everyone's life. And I'm like, you're not, first of all. And even if you are, like almost everything we can do other than sit in a padded room has some additional like marginal risk associated with it. But when it's that small, there's no point in worrying about it. Just right. Like you could make a rule that every vehicle on the road has to be built like a NASCAR car, with roll cages and all this stuff. And you know how many lives that would save every year? But everyone's just like, it's not worth, this extreme reaction for this relatively small risk. And that same thinking should be applied to this, but it's just not for whatever reason.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the balance that unfortunately you can explain that rationality to me. And right. I get it completely, but that rationality doesn't resonate with individuals that have they move through life based more on feeling as opposed to looking at things objectively or the bigger picture. So if your risk is substantially low to catch COVID, if you're being precautious, in addition to if you believe it's real, so a lot of people think that there's a mask for a much larger agenda, and who knows, maybe they're right as well. When I'm presented with the right evidence, I'm going to follow my path is logic and rationality, and that's how I draw my own conclusions. But there is a scale here, a direct correlating scale between how this is affecting your psychology, your mental health, compared to the severity of the COVID, the coronavirus. And
right,
it's like mental health is out the door. They've gone bonkers in their brain for something that is relatively close to null at this point. Every day people getting the vaccine shot, and they're becoming more and more less susceptible to, because of that herd immunity that's
right
getting larger and larger and larger day after day. It's eventually going to pass a point where there's going to be so many people with the vaccine that the general public is, there's going to be herd immunity. You're just not going to be
right.
It's unlikely you're going to catch it in the public.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. And I mean, I think part of it is that there is this element of where people get to feel really virtuous and self-important by doing things, you know what I mean? Where they're not just protecting themselves, or like, you just want people to die kind of thing. Like, look at me, I'm doing this for everyone else. You just want poor grandma to die kind of thing, where they can, rationalize their own fear by being like, oh, I'm not even doing this for me. I'm doing it for the greater good kind of thing. Like the mask wearing is for other people, not for you. And that's their excuse for trying to get people who aren't worried about it to follow all these stupid rules too. because it makes them feel better about themselves. They get to, think that they're not doing it because they're afraid. They're doing it because they're such a good person. And then they get to go full-blown Karen and, turn into a Nazi sympathizer kind of person, who's turning people in for these minor infractions, calling the cops on their neighbors and family members and whatnot. Yeah.
And even on the other end of the spectrum, where if you don't believe that COVID is real, and there's some people out there that don't, and maybe they're right. Maybe this is a big mask for some, there's a guy at the top of the chain here wearing a goat's head running around in the forest with a big wooden owl. They're all, the billionaires are praising some sort of satanic god. Who knows? Maybe that's true, or maybe that's inaccurate. The other praise is on the other end of the spectrum is that you're not awake because you wear the mask or you don't wear the mask.
Right.
So you need to wake up or snap out of the matrix or the bigger picture. So it's for me, that's borderline Asperger's Vulcan type of personality. It's very fascinating to me to watch all these theories come out, all these all these people talk about these different theories about what they believe, why they believe what they believe. It's very fascinating to me. So right,
it's definitely weird.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, please ask them in all caps. I think you should know that by now. I think I recognize every single person.
I know we got a lot of good regulars, which is awesome. It doesn't have to obviously be coronavirus related. I just thought it would be a good topic to hit since we're at the year mark of the 1 year or 2 weeks to stop the spread. And one thing that I did see, which I was unsure about which way it would go before the election, I thought that if Biden did eventually get inaugurated, I didn't know if they would try to use the coronavirus stuff to really crack down on certain things and overblow it, or if they would try to pretend like it didn't exist anymore and be like, oh, look, it's cured now kind of thing, which that seems to be the way they went with it. Almost immediately, they updated the definition of what constitutes an actual case in terms of like the PCR test. It had to get to a different level. So they eliminated a bunch of things as actually counting as a positive case. So instantly the number of cases dropped, and they were like, oh, look, all the things that we're doing, which was nothing, didn't actually do anything, made such a big difference.
Was it state or federal, or which?
I believe it was just like CDC requirements for what constitutes an actual case, like the actual levels of the either the antibody or whatever they test for in the PCR test. Like you can get a lot more positives if you lower the level to be like anything over this threshold counts as a positive case. You'll get a lot more false positives and things like that, but then you also get a lot more cases. So they jacked that number up to where a lot of people who would have been considered a case, back in August or September, now don't count as being a positive case. It counts as being testing negative. So automatically the number of cases drastically plummets because they just literally changed the definition.
I get that, and that's a sad thing. I'm just wondering the motivations behind it. Political motivation.
Right. I'm assuming so, yeah.
CDC budget motivation.
And also probably to show that to help people think that the vaccine's working, even though it may or may not be.
And it's people like yourself that are smart enough to read through look through the looking glass, so to speak, to see what's really happening. And if it's enough for whatever their motivations are, it's just, it just goes to show that you really can't trust any entity or government when they're intentionally muffling up the data. When you're
for sure
definitions to make yourself look better for XYZ reasons or motivations, then what are you really doing? It's like a form of propaganda, really.
For sure.
Ryan Hickenbottom, #1 fan. He's got to be in the top 3 #1 fans. I think we should give him a reward or something at the end of the year. We will probably never really get back to normal under COVID. It's just my hunch. I agree.
It's possible.
There's precedents that have been set where it's been done. It started when the pandemic happened, or there's people that are probably going to wear a mask inside a store for the rest of their lives.
Forever. Yeah, could be. Definitely. And we've seen that in other cultures, like in China and stuff. It's much more common to do that. So that could be something that never leaves the US, for decades, that it's always, hopefully we'll get past it being mandatory and whatnot fairly soon, like we're seeing already in a few states. But I definitely think that's another weird reaction too. A lot of when stuff like Texas came out with this saying we're not going to make it a rule anymore, like there's no statewide mandate for masks, there's no lockdown. A lot of people seem to interpret that as then like banning masks. People would come out and be like, I'm going to wear, like I took a picture like, hey, Governor Abbott, this is me wearing all my masks at once. And like, no one said you can't wear one. You can wear it. They're just saying they're not going to make it that you have to wear one. It's totally different. Anyone can wear one if you want to.
Well, most people are really not that smart. We're going to we'll talk about money here for a second. TK 421. Hyperinflation to economic collapse.
Yeah, I mean, that's just written in stone at this point. The U.S. money supply has been increased by something like 40% in the past year. Like the past year. And already we were at the point where it was like every president was adding more to the debt than every previous president combined. So it was going up exponentially. And now it's just insane. Like there's no unwinding this. So we're getting to the point now where it's just a question of how it's going to end up. Are they going to default on the debt or are they going to inflate it away? Obviously, I think we're seeing exactly what they're going to do. It's going to keep creating money. So you got to put your wealth into things that aren't linked to dollars. If you're holding cash, I think you're going to get wiped out. And I think crypto, gold and silver, any commodities, any physical things, real estate, even a lot of just general stocks will go up in nominal price as the currency declines. But I think real things, first order wealth and actual income generation, like businesses that actually are still operating, selling things, doing things, agriculture, all that's going to be good.
Like tangible hard assets, like
real things. Yeah. Even so, I mean, like it's weird to see even the price of like used cars and stuff like that just going way up. Like just every real thing is just becoming more expensive. Gas is extremely expensive. And part of that's related to decisions that were made by this new administration, like cutting off, like banning fracking, cutting off pipeline type stuff. Gas has spiked. So oil prices are going to continue to go up.
Deflation leading to unlimited printing press followed by hyperinflation. It's from Raise Hell. Good username. William McCaslin. I just like saying that name, McCaslin.
It does. It sounds like someone who's involved in like a shootout at the old K Corral or something. McCaskill. Old man McCaskill. McCaslin. Sorry, I said it wrong. Yeah, I mean, a gold standard would be nice. I really don't think that's ever going to happen because it takes the power away from the people that are currently in power. They're never going to willingly give it up. So there would have to be some kind of complete change to a new system. I mean, like Gregory Mannarino, if you haven't watched his channel, it's really good on market and finance stuff. Like he was saying, like whatever a business or an institution does, doing more of it makes them more powerful. Like if you're McDonald's, they sell hamburgers. Selling more hamburgers makes them more powerful. If you're the Federal Reserve, they issue and create debt. Doing more of that makes them more powerful. So people act like they're weakened by this increase in the money supply. No, that gives them even more power, basically. And as they become the lender of last resort. So that's what they want to do. That's their whole purpose, basically. So,
well, I mean, agree with what you were suggesting about going back to like real assets that you can hold in your hand. And I think close that I'm not a financial advisor. Do not listen to me,
right?
Like because I don't want you to take any of the advice I'd say. But the crypto sphere is an interesting one, and particularly with the recent, so they were electing a chair. I believe his name was Gary Gensler, who was a professor who taught cryptocurrency at MIT. He's a very intelligent man. I'm actually reviewing one of his courses right now, and the big question with him is a particular cryptocurrency called XRP.
Ripple, right? Yeah,
is going to drop or not. Because there was a lawsuit basically the day before the previous chair got out. They started a lawsuit with XRP back in December. So I'm very interested to see what happens with that particular cryptocurrency. But you know what? If there's enough people out there that believe in the value of crypto, I think it has a lot of potential in a lot of various ways. This year, I think it's a very exciting time to make a lot of money. I've been investing, looking at it, because it's independent of the system. That's why I love it. It's beautiful. There's no control, and I think that's why the Security Exchange Commission, the SEC, is is thinking about implementing. It's more for Americans. The concern for Americans, they're trying to figure out a way to put some sort of control over top of it, which I don't think they're going to successfully do.
Yeah.
At least for the
yeah, and things are gonna get a lot more expensive. And like Brian Hickenbottom here says, they need to raise the minimum wage to living wage. People are struggling. Yeah, people are struggling. The minimum wage thing is interesting because in general, I don't think that there should be a government mandated rule on what you can sell your things you own for, including your time. So when you're setting a minimum wage, you're literally saying someone is not allowed to sell their time for less, even if they want to. But the interesting thing about minimum wage is with the system as it's set up now, it would hurt people to not have a minimum wage probably. And there's a lot of like so-called conservatives kind of straddle the line and they're saying like, okay, yeah. So there should be a minimum wage so people don't get screwed over, but it shouldn't be $15 an hour. And there's no real reason why you can make an argument that if there is a minimum wage, it should be $7 and not 15 or whatever. So in the short term, like honestly, my stance is it just doesn't matter if we made the minimum wage $15. There's a reason why $7 was okay for a while and it's not now. And $15 an hour would be like untold riches, 100 years ago. So you have to start asking yourself, why is that not the same today? And it's just going to change again. 15 isn't going to change anything about why, $7 an hour isn't enough. People used to get paid 25 cents an hour. You know what I mean? 25 cents a day, so it's not about the amount. It's about the currency being debased and the whole system. So fixing the minimum wage is just a very short-term Band-Aid on a gaping gunshot wound.
We'll put a spin on that with respect to a comment by somebody named Blackbone. Parliament trying to pass Bill C-273. I'm not familiar with it, Blackbone. Universal basic income in the UN agenda. To pass a universal basic income, the middle class has to be destroyed. In a nutshell, if we're pushing towards a socialist agenda in Canada, it doesn't really matter where. It's never succeeded historically in society. B, it has the potential to kill millions of people, as we've seen historically, indirectly through starvation. So it's not a good pathway. It's capitalism. It's just this is the system. It may not be perfect, but if we're talking about socialism or capitalism, because once we have universal basic income, everything will be great for the start of it. But eventually, there's going to be people that are willing to contribute, and then there's going to be people that are just not going to want to do a damn thing.
Right. I mean, the counterpoint is, and like it's kind of like saying, like I've been just saying with the minimum wage, is that with the system we have now, it's almost the worst of both worlds. Like, would UBI be worse? I mean, not really. We're spending so much, but it's not the right solution. It just wouldn't necessarily be worse. It would be a lot more simple. Like now we have all these different forms of, like at least in the US, we have all these different various forms of welfare. Like you have the food stamps, this the subsidized housing, all these different departments are managed, and like there was something in, I think it was Seattle or Portland, where there was this homeless directive. Like they had some department that was made to give homeless people like housing in these tents or whatever, and it ended up the actual cost of like getting someone housed in some fucking tent was like $6,000 a month per person in a city where average rent is like $1,200 or $1,500 or whatever. So it literally would have been cheaper to just been like, here's the money, go rent a place. And like that's sort of the situation with UBI in a lot of ways, which I don't think it's the right solution for the government to just give other people's money away, but it could technically be more efficient. But the problem is they never are just going to do something better. They're going to still continue to do both, and but again, it comes back to the reasons why these issues are there in the first place, where just like someone mentioned here, who was it? They said that the minimum wage is passed on to the consumer or to the regular end user. Minimum wage gets passed to the consumer equals inflation. True, it does, but we're going to get nailed by inflation anyway. The inflation is happening because of an increase in the money supply. An increase in minimum wage is not inflation. You could have an absolutely stable monetary system and the government can make minimum wage still if they wanted. So that's kind of the issue, is that the consumers are going to get hammered, by inflation regardless. So is it worse that the minimum wage goes up? No. I mean, that's happening because of the inflation, not because of the minimum wage. That's just a realization of it. Honestly, yeah. So it's interesting. I'm not necessarily. I don't really care about the stuff like the minimum wage and the UBI because it just doesn't matter.
I don't care either, just because of what we've seen historically. Even if it's inflation, and then there's look at it's either people are going to starve to death because the cost of bread is going to be skyrocketed so high,
Right.
or the person in charge is going to become a dictator. And those are really the only two things that have happened historically with socialist countries. And if we're talking about a universal basic income, it doesn't. It hasn't worked historically. It just, I don't understand how people can think it's going to work within society.
Right.
There's
Like work. Yeah. What does it mean to work? To have the system be stable and not eventually collapse or whatever. I mean, you can look at a lot of monetary and political structures, communism, socialism. A lot of them could technically, quote unquote, work if you have a small group of people who are dedicated to the system working. Like if you took a family, so let's say, or a tribe of like 1,000 people, a lot of ways you would organize that if you actually cared about the other people would be considered socialist or communist. Like if your aunt gets injured, you're like, all right, you know what, you're not going to work for a few days, we'll support you. But both people in that equation care about the system working, and the aunt isn't going to be like, oh, I guess I could just pretend like my leg's broken for the rest of my life and let everyone else hunt for me. You know what I mean? When she's healed, she's going to, and if you get sick, then she's going to take care of you and stuff like that. So a lot of systems that I would never advocate for in terms of a large country's government can still work if everyone is dedicated to helping each other and being altruistic. And at the same time, none of the systems actually work if you have a large group of people in the country who don't give a fuck about anybody else and are just willing to leech from the system no matter what. The reason I think capitalism and a capitalist type system is the closest to being a best thing in that situation is because you at least have the option to go out there and get your good behavior rewarded. You know what I mean? Like in a socialist type system, the leechers will still get something out of the system, and you have no opportunity to try and rise above it, even if you want to, by like making a business, making a product, that sort of thing. So it at least had the opportunity to reward your behavior in. But then you also have the downside of if you are truly in an unfortunate situation where maybe you have like major health problems and you don't have any family, like you could be screwed up, and be in a really bad spot. Whereas for some people, then having some kind of socialized medicine system would actually be better. But you can't have it in a system where there's so many people who don't give a fuck about the country or about the rest of the people in it, because they're just going to abuse it and leech from it and never provide anything.
Agreed. One good thing about Canada is we all pitch into the healthcare system here, and it's seems to be working. This whole notion of capitalism is it definitely has its faults, as you're suggesting. I mean, if you're not you're not motivated to go out there and make it, so to speak, in a capitalistic world, you've got health issues, especially if you're in America, then you don't really have a lot of options, really. When you're going to be intense, Skid Row.
Yeah,
it's not going to be good. But I think a bigger issue that we're both haven't neglected to speak about is the core of how these systems are, the decisions behind these. A lot of these, the people that make the decisions, and what happens with all the money that's coming into the governments. So I think it's possible we could restructure the system from more of a foundational place. I mean, if you look at governments, how much they waste the time, spend money carelessly. They were saying $6,000 a month for a tent.
Yeah, some great.
I mean, if there were some financial advisors in there to sort of look at things more objectively and responsibly, then I think we could offer different types of community services, different types of mental health programs, et cetera, to help the people at the bottom of the pile. But to me, I think a big part of the pie in terms of the problem is governments.
Yeah,
their gross incompetencies with respect to spending and decision making, and the incapacity to change that as we move forward, especially with the government that you have now. Right. Unfortunately, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, I read something earlier. I didn't get to the question, but they're talking about banning private sales. Is that true? Like, was that
of weapons?
I'm not too sure. Something about firearms there.
Oh, I mean, like they have a whole list of things that they'd like to do. Luckily, a lot of them are unconstitutional, so we'll see what happens with it. But so far, they seem to be contented just to make everything super fucking expensive, and that's a backdoor, way to.
Which is even a waste of time too, because if they had some competency and intelligence, it's almost like they want to use their, the hey, let's ban private sales. They know it's unconstitutional. They know it's never going to happen. What are they doing?
Right.
They're wasting time. They're wasting money just so they can put a lightning bolt to make some headlines, to bring some awareness, or whatever the political agenda is. I mean,
and also I'm sure part of it's a strategy of being like, they have this whole list of things. 2 of them they actually want to get done, and would seem pretty bad if they just said we're going to do these 2 things, but instead they we're going to make guns illegal, and everyone's like, oh my god, no, and they fight, and they're like, okay, and they keep backing down until they're like, all right, we're just going to do these 2 things. And everyone's like, thank God, and that seems almost like not that bad now, because they were starting from, and which is a legitimate kind of negotiation technique in certain, where you start way ahead, it's like, what, are you crazy, and then come back to just now something that would have seemed a little high, like a price maybe would have seemed a little high if that was the only offer, now seems much more reasonable, kind of thing. So
yeah, agreed. Brian Hickinbottom, I like Bernie Sanders' approach of guaranteed jobs that approach living wages. It's what President Roosevelt wanted in the mid 40s. I think that's plausible. I just, somebody's got to be on the factory line to punch license plates and the crap jobs. If you're on social assistance or some sort of universal income, then you have to work.
Yeah, I mean, part of that though is interesting, because that goes back to what I was saying about the tents. Now you're saying you have to have a job. So okay, if there isn't a job, now we have to create a job instead of just giving the guy the money. So now you're back in a situation where you're giving $5,000 for something that, instead of just giving the guy 2,000, you know what I mean? What if there just aren't enough jobs? In that situation, if you've already decided that the government should be giving them money, just giving it to them is almost always going to be better than coming up with this complex system. And then you could say, now those people are out of the workforce. If everyone wants to work, they can, that sort of thing, because the more levels of complexity you add into it to try and fine-tune control and stuff is just going to make it worse. It never is going to make it more efficient.
Well, my position about restructuring the government, or just at least analyzing that because of the incompetencies there. But just to entertain that thought for a second, what if you had, you get this much for doing nothing? You exist. You want to live in a tent. You want to, talk to a telephone pole all day because you're right. whatever your preference is. But you'll give more for a job. And let's just say, and you're right, you'd have to look at job creation in some respects, or the basic job could be just cleaning up the city, cleaning up the garbage on the side of the road.
And are you saying this is like a government supplied job?
Sure.
Yes. So what if you just do a terrible job? You're like, all right, I want the extra money. I'm willing to work, but show up late, half-ass it. Are you not allowed to fire them, or what?
Okay, fair. Yeah, I could see how that would get inherently complex, because then you have maybe a supervisor that rates you and you get an extra bonus or not based on your performance.
And then they say, oh, I have this mental illness. It's not my fault. I can't, show up on time. I live in a tent with my 1,200 UBI. I don't have a car. You know what I mean? I still should be able to have the job and get a little bit extra money if I want.
Yeah, sure. You're right.
You know what I mean?
There's added complexities. I think, and you're right, in that there would be a lot of failure in terms of people wanting to achieve that extra income. However, there would also be a pathway to for individuals that wish to excel. I'm in a shitty situation. I want to get out of here. This is what I got to do. Sure, I'll wake up there. I'll do what I have to do to dig themselves out of that hole.
So that's my point: is if the opportunities are there for those people that want to, then I think it's okay. If you're at the point where you have accepted or admitted or decided that the government has to support the bottom level, you know what I mean? then I think doing it in the most clean, simple way possible, just saying that here's the money, it's a cost, we're just going to eat it, we're literally giving them money, and then that's it, you're done, you're on your own after that, like you get the money, but that is it. And then let this, that is always going to be the least expensive, least complex way to do it than trying to actually fix each problem in and of itself. And if you were going to do that at all, I think that's the only way to do it, is to just be like, here's the money, it's like we wash our hands of it. You can't say we're leaving you to die, whatever, but that's it. That's really it. If you want more, we have a generally capitalist system. After that, you can go apply in the same job market based on merit, experience, whatever, as anyone else. But we've made sure that you're not just going to die because you can't or won't do it.
Sure. Yeah, we didn't abandon you as a government.
It's the bottom level safety net, but then that's it.
Yeah.
That would be the only way you could really do it, I think, in a way that wouldn't eventually collapse the system.
And you know what? You could very well be right in that that could be the only viable practical solution. It's certainly the easiest. And perhaps the problem isn't so much about giving them money as much as it is the other avenues to regaining control of their, that individual's confidence or life through outreach programs, through trying to get them off the street and into hostels, through re-education, things of this sort. All right. SPQR Cincinnati.
All right. Thank you, bro.
I'm all for government programs. Thank you very much, by the way. I'm all for government programs so long as everyone who receives tax dollars in any form is not allowed to vote.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I agree, because right now we have a system where if someone is a net consumer, basically, they're not productive in the sense that they take more from the system than they give into it. It is always a horrible idea to let that person decide on the direction of the government, and like how much because they're always just going to vote themselves more largesse from the public coffers, as the quote says. You know what I mean? So I think I would go so far as to say I think he agrees with me as well, that if you're a net tax consumer, basically, of any kind, you can't vote. If you work for the government pretty much at all, including military, you can't vote while you're in the military or whatever, because you know what I mean? Like, I think it's just an obvious conflict of interest to have people in the government and benefiting from the government in a net sense to be making decisions about how that entity uses its resources. It's supposed to be the people. And if you're working for the government directly, or you're benefiting financially in terms of how much you're taking from it directly, then it's just obviously a big conflict of interest that's going to cause problems to let those people make those decisions. And I think it should be fluid. Like, while you're in government service, if you're like a congressman or something, you shouldn't get allowed to vote on the normal things that everyone else does. If you work for the federal government doing pretty much anything, I don't think you should be able to vote. And then when you come back out in the private sector, then you can vote again, as long as you're a net taxpayer. And that makes perfect sense to me. I don't know why that's even controversial.
I agree. I was laughing there in the back. I agree. Mm-hmm. Said I thought that because I was thinking this as well in the last few moments. Keisha said, I thought this was a preparedness channel. All this political talk sucks. That's much better than this drivel. I was thinking that too. Wow, we really didn't talk preparedness tonight. It was just about the financial. But you know what? To be fair, this isn't going to be the first conversation about finances on this channel, because I think the byproduct of this pandemic, as we alluded to, when we don't take our word for it, we're going to see some degree of a financial collapse. There's definitely enough. The glass is smashed, and there's enough ripples in the system that
that's what I was going to say. I mean, obviously, I think one of the main things that most preppers would agree on being a significant possibility for a major shit the fan event is financial in nature. So always that's going to come up in terms of what would cause this, how we could theoretically prevent it, that sort of thing. So I don't even necessarily, obviously that politics comes into that, but it's more from the perspective of the fragility of the system than it is from, just purely political.
If you want my advice preparedness wise, it's with respect to finances. This is it's funny too, because I had worked really hard in the latter part of last year to I thought I was going to the States for a bit, and that didn't happen. So I had a lot of money to invest into crypto, and I've been researching it 24/7. It seems like all these other areas of my life are covered. So A, B, in terms of preparedness, B, the opportunity is huge to make a lot of money through cryptocurrencies this year. So finances is a very viable prep, and this is something that's
Yeah.
available to you, Keisha, or anybody else watching. There's lots of videos on there online to learn how to get into it. There's a lot of opportunity. This is an excellent time to start learning about how cryptocurrencies work. It's an industry that's in its infancy, and it's just be careful. Don't throw all your eggs in one basket. Check the credibility, the integrity of your sources.
Right.
And I got to tell you, I think I'm going to be a rich man by the end of this year.
Nice.
And there's just so much opportunity. And
yeah, and I think it's also the financial thing is something that is one of the most important. Like it's a lot harder, first of all, to set yourself up to be financially prepared because it takes so much more resources versus getting 3 to 6 months of food on hand. You can do with several hundred to several $1,000s if depending on how you use your resources. But like setting yourself up to be financially secure is way tougher. It takes a lot more resources, but it's equally as important.
Yeah, but the people watching this channel, most of them are preppers. Most of them have their preps, and if they're I don't want to discredit the crowd, but they should be out on a regular basis working on skills and things like that. They should also look at what's coming. What's the next wave that we're going to encounter? It's going to be some ripples with the financial system. People can be crapping their pants about it, or they can see a huge opportunity. We got all this time on our hands. Some of these people aren't working right now, or maybe they don't have time, money to invest, which is a whole other issue. But to me, I just see this huge amount of opportunity. The price of sugar is going to go up one day, and because of this weird interdependent connection that all these things have. And I just hypothetically I'm saying. So as a result, I don't know, man. I mean, like for me, I see opportunity left, right, and center for people to be making money.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things, crypto is one of them, which I'm also trying to learn a lot more about. I'll probably have to talk to you offline about it too. And I know we have at least one viewer who is really into crypto, who has been saying he'd be willing to come on and do a show on it. So I'll probably hit him up. One, like you said, opportunities. Like one of the things is when we've talked about multiple times on this show about how much money has been created in the last year or whatever, like 40%. Everyone knows that it's being parroted around everywhere. So like, what does that mean? How can you take advantage of that? There is going to be massive inflation that could give you massive opportunities if you have time to prepare for it. I actually just bought a house recently, and one of the reasons I did that, even though prices are really crazy here, is because I'm expecting, they have 2.5% interest rates or something. I got 2.5% interest rate, 30-year mortgage, in a time when the money supply has increased by 40% in the past year. Like, you know what I mean? So is money going to be worth the same in 30 years? It is. So I could borrow money at 2.5% basically when it's guaranteed to go up by 2, 3, 4 times. Inflation is guaranteed to go up by 2, 3, 4 times that much. So stuff like that you can do, and then you can put your money into things that are like cryptocurrencies or silver and gold, anything that can actually not just maintain the value, but potentially even gain value in these situations, especially relative to any debts you might have, like a mortgage or whatever. So that's the plan.
Yeah, no, it's a smart plan, but not only gain value, but in some respects, some things are gaining value for irrational reasons. I mean, we've got a whole market. Do you guys have the Hertz rental, car rental company?
Yeah, we have Hertz.
I think they went out of business.
Really?
Because of the pandemic. I could be mistaken. I know they did. But this is just an example of an industry. There's certain industries that have disappeared, gone down to zero. They're eventually going to jump back up. Eventually, we're going to need rental cars again. Eventually, we're going to be all going to movie theaters again. So, what's going to happen to those stock markets? They're all going to jump through the roof again one day. So yeah, man, I just see a lot of opportunity, and for the people that are down and out, or they don't have money, or they don't have money to invest, then you got to change that. Take 10% of what you make every week or 2 weeks and throw it aside, and be smart. The information is there. There's a huge plethora of information online. You have to dig around a bit. There's a lot of people that are full of shits. There's a lot of people that use clickbait and will try and entice you to sucker you into some newsletter with a price tag at the end of it. But if you're smart, calculated, you'll find the right information. You'll find that right path. But more importantly, above all, the most important tactic you can apply to this, not only to finances, cryptocurrencies, prepping in general, is your genuine passion and desire to do it. It's the action. It's the motivation behind moving forward.
Right.
That's the difference between people that succeed and are confident with their preps and how they feel about preparedness in general, and other people that waste their time worried in this fear-mongering world of preparedness and do nothing but watch YouTube videos all day. There's a big difference.
Exactly.
There's a lot of different types of preppers out there, man.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it looks like we actually made it basically the whole hour. I didn't know if I was going to early on. I was feeling so rough. Once you get going, though, it flies by, which is nice. Someone mentioned memes. I have a decent number that people sent me, but they're still in my email. I didn't have a chance to download them yet, so I'm probably going to wait on those till next week. But if you guys have any last minute questions, let me know.
We got a few minutes. Me and Eric are we're just so disappointed this guest didn't show up.
Yeah, like sickened by it. Actually, maybe I'll be lucky and get the corona and get the 10 days off work, but I don't think so. I just get to feel crappy and go to work anyway.
I've got one meme. Can I send it to you to show?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Give me
you have the option to share. Oh, because yours does that goofy share thing, right? Where you hit the second screen. Yeah, just email it to me. I'll pop it up.
Cool. Gotta find it here. It's stopped. Crypto.
I have like 4 that I've already downloaded, so I can show those too. But I want to thank all the guys who have been sending them to me. They're still in my email. I haven't downloaded them.
We did a bunch from the gentleman and his wife last week, but it came with they weren't happy that I swore in reference to women.
Oh.
So hey, we didn't, we watch you and Eric every week. We like your channel. You're nice guys, but don't, we didn't like it. I get it. And then I kind of told him a story about why I don't really. But anyways, they sent me a bunch of memes, so maybe next week I'll include those.
South Florida DCL is asking if we talk about protecting self and property from an EMP. And
yes.
Yeah, I'd like to do a whole show on that in the future. It might be a little late for today, but there's a channel in particular that I've been following where the guys really covers like practical, specific, scientific EMP protection type stuff. And I'm gonna try and get that guy, contact him and see if he can come on the show, because it's not not the hyperbole, none of this like weird stuff. It's really scientific, and he seems to have a really great handle on the realities of it, of what we know about it at least. So. Let me see if it's got your picture over.
Topic, and I mean, South Florida DCL. Here's the problem.
Is this the one that you sent me? I don't even know if I get it.
Did you?
I mean, I got the picture, but I don't know if I like get the joke. Let me see. Let me see. Cheers. Is this the one right here? It says this guy invests $20 on free coin.
Yeah, it's just the fact that he's spending all for $20 into a stock.
Oh yeah. Okay, I get it. Because I actually just commented that on Twitter. I was like, why is it the people that are like the biggest like proponents of something going to the moon and whatever, watching it constantly updated, they always have like $100 on it or whatever. It's never the guys who like throw 50 G's on it who are like, go to the moon. Yeah, I get it now.
Yeah.
And that's so true.
Yeah. That's it.
I got like 4. Like I said, everyone has sent me some good ones, but I didn't have a chance to download them yet, so I only have like 3 or 4. And they're totally not prepping related. They're just stupid All right, let me share screen again. So here we got the GameStop guy, but it's the Mr. Potato Head. It's Yam. So I don't know if you remember the original meme. There was this transgender person who went into GameStop, and the poor kid who's working about, because this was obviously a guy, and they weren't even close to being what you'd consider passable, I guess. But and this poor kid is trying to help him out, and he's like, "Oh, sir," and like this, not even thinking about it, calls him sir, and they're like, "It's ma'am," and God like yelled at him that it's ma'am. So, and then they had the whole kerfuffle recently where they were like, "It's no longer Mr. Potato Head, it's just Potato Head." So now he's like, "It's Yam." And then we have when you hit your brother too hard and you hear your mom's footsteps. It's all bleeding from the head. And then we got when you're driving through your hometown and you see an old friend from high school. It's like this crazy like cave dweller troglodyte type of dude on a bike, some meth head or something. And then we got movie studio. Okay, so it's about corrupt cops and it's set in Boston. Mark Wahlberg's taking off. Like every single one of his movies is
like half of his movies.
Right, exactly. That's it. That's all I had. Like I said, I'll get all the ones you guys sent me. I really appreciate those. I'll throw them up when I have a chance to put them in the folder. I didn't download them in time. Yeah, that's pretty good.
For DCL, I'm looking for options on protecting that doesn't cost a lot. There's not a lot of. Here's the thing with EMP. First off, William Forstchen, 1 second after, or it's Michael Malouf.
Lights Out, or what's it called?
Forsaken. More technical analysis on EMP.
Okay.
And yeah, it's. I think they both said it's going to be like 90% of the population will be dead in 1 year.
For sure. I mean, like that's what we've always talked about is a total grid down scenario like that is really the only type of realistic thing that could happen for like a Mad Max type scenario. And one of the only things to really do that widespread scale would be an EMP or something like that. So it would just be catastrophic. Luckily, I think it's a pretty low probability event, but it's unknown probability.
And exactly. It's certainly a true SHTF situation if we have an EMP.
Oh, for sure. Because I mean, you're not even talking about just a loss of utilities. You're talking about even all the little things that you do already have at your house wouldn't even work a lot of the time, probably. But
the biggest problem I think is going to be for people to the psychological adaptation of not being able to use the internet. There's going to be all these instance requirements to change your day-to-day actions and behaviors. There'll be a lot of psychological breakdowns. If you got an older car and it doesn't have a lot of electronics, then it's possible. I guess it depends on the magnitude of the EMP. But let's just assume you've got a running car. There's the one test the Department of Defense did back in we'll say the 90s. It's a gentleman named Jerry Emanuelson that talked about this on a website called Defense.com. You know what, Eric, to be fair, maybe we'll get into this next week a little bit more. I can talk about EMP for a while.
Yeah, we definitely need to do that for one of the shows, schedule it, because it's something that there's so much information, misinformation, and out there that it's really be cool to cover it. But if you're talking quickly, if you're talking about, depends on what you're talking about protecting. If you're talking about small items, that's relatively easy. Put them in the various types of Faraday cages you can build. If you're talking about stuff like your whole house or a solar panel system or vehicles, then it's a lot more difficult. But there are options, and we'll go over that when we cover it. Get some expert on.
Yeah. There's so many different factors as well. It really depends on your goals as what you plan to do. I mean, I think power generation would be important. So I did a couple presentations on this years ago. I mean, one of the things that with my Faraday cage would be a charge controller,
right,
for starters. I think we're giving too much away here. Let's.
Well, this is a whole show we could do on that for sure. So, but yeah, that's pretty good. I think it's a good time to wrap it up, so I can recover from my little case of the sniffles.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. And I apologize if we went a little too political, financial there for you, but it's it's not gonna be the last time. We are heading
Right.
towards some sort of financial collapse in some respects, I think. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Shay,
Yeah.
for watching.
Eric, rulewasteland.com. Always appreciate the support for those of you who just showing up, always liking, commenting, all that stuff. And certainly the people who've been super chats. It's always a great show of support. We really appreciate it. So we'll be here next week as well. And we'll talk to you guys then.